Welcome to History Clips. I'm Mr. Hummel.
And I'm Mr. Bueller. And last time we were on History Clips, we were talking about the causes of the American Civil War. And today what we will be discussing is actually the battles that are being fought during this conflict that decided it. This will be a two-part series.
And there is hundreds of battles that occurred in the Civil War. We are only choosing the biggest and the ones that had the most influence in the Civil War.
Now, the North's grand strategy to end the Civil War very quickly with a single knockout blow is to attack and take over the Confederate States of America's capital of Richmond, Virginia.
And Richmond is only 80 miles from Washington, D.C., and the South kind of makes a bad choice in choosing Richmond. However, it was the largest town, other than maybe Atlanta, within the southern states.
But it means it's so close to Washington, D.C., there's always going to be that threat of military invasion.
Нордберг, осваняй меня.
The Union Army start marching towards Richmond under the command of General McDowell. But McDowell decides to take a detour to Bull Run, Virginia, because he finds out that there's a Confederate force there, and he doesn't want to have the risk of being attacked from behind by them while he's marching towards Richmond. On paper, this seems like a good plan. He has around 35,000 troops. The Confederates under General Beauregard, they only got about 20,000.
However, Beauregard asks for reinforcements, and General Johnston arrives with another 11,000 men just before the battle occurs, and this levels the playing field. Now you're talking 35,000 to 31,000, and the South will win the battle after a hard fight and chase the North all the way back to Washington.
Showing how game he is. A left hand out of nowhere. So far in this fight. Freitas in all kinds of difficulty here. Barrios. Oh, look out, Barrios at the bell down.
Now after Bull Run, both sides, Union and Confederate, realize we need better soldiers because this is going to be a long war. We need them professionally trained, professionally equipped, and we need them to be ready to fight this long engagement that's going to happen. And to do that, the Union appoints a new general by the name of McClellan.
And McClellan was a great planner, and he could come up with great battle plans. In fact, after he trains his troops, he makes the decision to sneak around the Confederates and attack by the sea in what was known as the Peninsula Campaign.
It looks like they moved the hostages into the Teller area. I'm gonna get a closer look.
Amazingly, this plan works great. He sneaks completely around the Confederate main forces, he lands on the peninsula, but he's a slow, timid guy. And instead of rushing towards Richmond, he takes his time slowly moving up the coast towards the city.
Of course, it was 1958, so the resistance wasn't quite as stiff.
No running! I said no running!
I'm not running!
So, as McClellan's slowly heading up the peninsula towards Richmond, General Johnston, and then later General Lee, when Johnston gets hurt, starts making a bunch of frontal and flanking attacks against McClellan. And this freaks out McClellan. He starts asking for reinforcements and thinks that he is actually outnumbered when he's not.
And despite McClellan having more men by about 30,000, more cannons, more food, more bullets, having just the better army on paper, he gets scared and he retreats completely off the peninsula back to Washington.
Well, I've been doing a little research and I found out you need to train falcons.
Oh, that's probably why it attacked me.
He has completed my training course, as have I his. Turns out falcons are hunting birds. They catch mice, rats, moles, voles, and chipmunks.
What's a vole?
Don't know. Let's find out. Falcon, bring us back a vole. Sha-sha.
No.
So Bill's a vole. If you're wondering where the falcon is, I let him go in the woods. Kept the glove, though. Keeps my beer from cooling my hand and keeps my hand from warming my beer.
Well, not to beat a dead horse, fellas, but what is your favorite kind of sausage? Chicken and apple? Breakfast patty? Italian? Spicy Italian? Sweet Italian?
He found his way home.
Now the South is the one with all the momentum, and Lee comes up with a plan where he's going to be the one to sneak into the North. He's going to invade Maryland, which always had some Confederate sympathies to begin with, and he's going to turn it into a Confederate ally. And with that, Washington, D.C. will be completely surrounded by Confederate forces, and he's going to force Lincoln to surrender.
This is all by the idea that he thought that the North was too weak and that they were too afraid to fight, and basically a bunch of babies anyway. And the North is going to attack.
Plan at first goes great. He sneaks around McClellan's forces, he goes up the Shenandoah Valley, he's able to capture Harper's Ferry and get all these new weapons, new cannons for his forces. But when he gets into Maryland, he ends up getting caught sneaking around the state. And the Union forces, they meet him, and there's a fight.
There is a riot in progress. Seal all exits. Attention. Dr. Lee and his foes are trying to escape. All guards report no blockade immediately. Dr. Lee and his foes are getting away.
The North attacks the South at Antietam in Maryland, and it lasts one day and is considered the bloodiest day in the Civil War up to that point. The North and South fight to a complete standstill. The casualties are about the same, but the North can still claim victory because Lee decides to back his troops away and head back to Virginia.
Now we'll learn who's the best. Face to foot style. How'd you like it? Please stop! Wimplo sucks as a fighter. A child could beat him. Got you now. Yay! Hi! Why? Please. Why? I'm bleeding. Making me
Now, even though he won the battle, technically, General McClellan still will be fired because he fails to pursue Lee despite Lincoln's demands to. And he will be replaced by a man by the name of General Burnside, which we will later call Sideburns after. General Burnside is a brave, loyal general, but he's utterly incompetent when he has a lot of men under his control. He's going to make one of the biggest blunders of the Civil War.
His idea is to cross a river right at Fredericksburg and then attack the South on the other side of the river. Lee decides it's not worth attacking them right at the river because as you cross through Fredericksburg and cross a plain, there's these two massive hills, 300 to 400 feet high, and they're almost straight up. So Lee decides to reinforce the hills. Let them cross the river and attack us. Burnside takes the bait and attacks, and they get wiped out.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground! You underestimate my power! Don't try it!
This is the lowest time for the Union Army. There's rumblings amongst the common enlisted men about maybe even mutinying against Burnside and replacing him with McClellan again, because the soldiers felt like, at least even though McClellan wasn't the bravest general, he cared about our lives and wouldn't waste them in these stupid frontal attacks.
Tahiti?
Why, yes, it was truly an unforgettable vacation. I order you to forget it. And while you're working, I want to hear a sea shanty in a round.
Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream.
Rounder, I hear edges.
Gently down the stream.
You're off key.
Merrily, merrily.
Make that song your own. You don't sound like you've ever been on a boat in your life. What the?
Captain, this is a mutiny.
Let's not be hasty there. What if I introduce a suggestion box?
We have a suggestion box. You made it from the head of the last guy who had a suggestion.
Yeah, but
Lincoln is able to stop the mutiny by firing Burnside and replacing him with General Hooker.
And General Hooker has this plan where he's going to sneak across the Rappahannock River, threaten Richmond, and get Lee to attack him, and they'll meet in this head-on collision where General Hooker, with his greater numbers, superior firepower, is just going to roll over General Lee and defeat him like that. But Lee, once again, using audacity, thinking outside the box, doing what is least expected, is managing to maneuver around Hooker and defeat him. Hooker will lose his nerve and retreat back to Washington again.
Yeah, baby.
Lee once again decides to invade the North. However, this time not stopping in Maryland, but heading into Pennsylvania and attacking one of the forts near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, for its supplies. The Northern Army meets Lee at Gettysburg, which will become one of the bloodiest battles in American history.
And the Battle of Gettysburg will last 3 days. And Lee almost wins this battle. Like I said, he's a good commander. But the Northern troops, they're fighting in their own territory, in states that are their home states, and they refuse to lose this battle or be chased away. And their resolve holds.
Into the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Arnold. Dark fire will not avail you, flame of Udun! Go back to the shadow. Shall not pass!
On the third day of battle, Lee decides to make an attack, make this grand march across a mile of open terrain against an elevated Union position, and it looks wonderful. However, it goes as well as you could understand. An elevated position in open territory. To pour salt into the wounds after the Confederate forces losing all these men, the Union forces chant Fredericksburg in a response to their loss earlier the previous year.
General Pickett, sir, you must look to your division.
General Lee, I have no division.